unfortunately, you're correct, Alex. What we have here is Iraq part 2. You'll remember how the what I call the fawning corporate media, how they spun Iraq, so we were all led to believe that there were weapons of mass destruction there and ties between Saddam Hussein and Al-Qaeda. None of that was right. And none of the hype that's going on now with respect to the, quote, Iranian nuclear threat, end quote, is right. It's hyperbole to the nth degree, and people in Congress in particular are having a feeding frenzy on things that they have so warped that the American citizen can't really understand what's going on.
Okay.
Let me try to put it in some context.
Okay, do that after we go to break. We're going to come back. I'm going to give you the floor. I want you to break this down because I remember 2.5 weeks ago, the Iranians have got all these different sites. The UN admits it can't get uranium above 95% to make weapons. The Iranians announce, here's a new site we've got. And then the media hoaxes it, saying they've got it. It was secret. We found it. Boy, we better attack them. Netanyahu's making secret trips to Russia to get green light. Russia starts saying we support sanctions. What's your intel? Does that mean Russia's going to back an attack? We'll talk about it all with Ray McGovern straight ahead.
Finally in the news this evening, it's being reported that cyber spies from Russia and China have now penetrated our power grid. Even as energy experts are reporting that each summer we get closer and closer to the limits of our nation's power grid, some say that this summer's demand for electrical power may finally push the grid over its edge, creating a cascade of power outages across the country, putting us all in the dark.
Are you prepared for the next round of storm-related outages or government-created blackouts? Have you ever thought about taking steps to get off the grid and generate your own private supply of electrical power? If so, this will be the most important information you have ever heard. Solar-powered generators are finally available. They have no moving parts to wear out or break and require absolutely no gas whatsoever. Remember, the government doesn't own the sun, so go to mysolarbackup.com. That's mysolarbackup.com. Check out mysolarbackup.com before you lose your power.
Well, we have a former senior CIA analyst, Ray McGovern, whose information has proven over the years to be very, very accurate in hindsight, joining us. Okay, Ray, you were getting into what's really happening with Iran and these sites and what you agreed is a big hoax, saying that it was a secret site and they're going to nuke us in 45 minutes, changing the last letter in Iraq to Iran.
Yeah. Well, you got it, Alex. That's what's going on. It's hype that's really unconscionable. Let me go back a little ways here, because after the debacle on Iraq, when my former colleagues were visited several times by the vice president, his name is Cheney, and told to write a national intelligence estimate that said Saddam Hussein has all manner of weapons of mass destruction. That was October 1, 2002. After that happened, my former colleagues rose to the occasion and said, no more of that stuff. We're not going to do that anymore. We're going to tell the truth, which reverts back to the kind of atmosphere in which I worked. The only place in town without a political agenda, the only place in town that can tell the president without fear or favor what we really think. Now, to make that clear, when people say, well, how come you torture people? There are basically two CIAs, all right? The one that obeys the president's wishes and is able to do that under the National Security Act of 1947, the one that goes off and kidnaps people and tortures people, that's not the CIA I worked in. I worked in the analysis part and the part of the covert agency that collected information, okay? And what I'm talking about now is that CIA. Now, what did we do? Well, what did my former colleagues do? Well, what we did, to coin a phrase, is in 2006, we gave Bush and Cheney the finger, Tom Finger, F-I-N-G-A-R, who was an honest estimator, incredibly bright, came from the State Department, and ran an estimate on Iran and its nuclear program, which is a bottom-up estimate. They spent months and months and months relooking at all the previous work, taking into account the most recent information information, and they came up with some startling conclusions that were at direct variance with what President and Cheney had been telling the world, okay? Number one, the NIE judged with, quote, high confidence, end quote, that Iran had stopped a covert nuclear weapons program in the fall of 2003 and had not resumed work on this nuclear weapons aspect of its program. This is an essential part of a nuclear program. They stopped work on it, and the latest briefing of Congress indicates that the CIA believes, and the intelligence community as well, that they did not restart this. So this is a very curious way to be, as Defense Secretary Gates says, hell-bent on developing a nuclear weapon if you stopped, let's see, what's the math here, 6 years ago, okay?
And, sir, didn't they say at the time in the highly publicized report that if Iran restarted it, it would take 9 years?
Oh, well, they said 2015 or so. It was a kind of a bracketed thing, and it all depended on how quickly they could enrich uranium to the weapons grade, and also what kind of delivery system they could get. Now, no one from a technical point of view said that Iran could be a threat to the United States in any time frame soon. They have no ICBMs. They have no method of delivering a weapon, even if they restarted their work on weapons. To whom are they a threat? Well, there's one other country in that region who actually has about 200, some people say 300 nuclear weapons deliverable by aircraft, by submarines, by surface ships, by missile. And the name of that country is Israel. And no one should shy away from mentioning that, because that is the fly in the ointment. If there's a country in that region that has not signed the non-proliferation agreement and has this kind of capability, and the United States shows itself willing to invade a country like Iraq without that capability, well, if I were an Iranian, I would think long and hard about being able to have the option to have that capability. And so this estimate said, we don't know whether the Iranians would develop a nuclear weapon, but the evidence is not there. We will know in great time, in enough time to know and take precautions and get them to negotiate. But
Ray,
the bottom line here is there is time to negotiate.
Long segment coming up. We'll continue there. Look at the latest hype. Iran announces they've got a facility. The media spins it and says, we found a secret facility. We've got to attack. We'll be right back. This is Alex Jones. Have you heard of the Millionaire Patriot? Well, you should. He has a free handgun and 5 days of firearms training waiting for you. That's right. You can attend 5 days of world-class gun training at Front Sight Firearms Training Institute and secure a 30-state concealed weapons permit, all for pennies on the dollar. Plus, if you act fast, the Millionaire Patriot will give you a free Springfield Armory XD pistol in the caliber of your choice. I believe now is the time that you and your family need to be armed and trained to levels that exceed law enforcement and military standards. Front Sight provides such training without any boot camp mentality or drill instructor attitudes. This is real. Don't miss out. Secure a Front Sight defensive handgun course, plus a 30-state concealed weapons permit for pennies on the dollar, and get your free handgun. Go to frontsight.com today. That's FRONTSIGHT.com. Go to frontsight.com for your training and free gun.
Front porch sitting in an old rocking chair. The sun is hot in the Texas sky.
Going back to Ray McGovern in just one moment as we continue to get a briefing from him. Honored to have him on what's really going on. And he's one of the main people that came out and said the WMD thing is all a lie in Iraq. The yellow tubes, or the aluminum tubes, the yellow cake from Niger, all of it. And then now we know in hindsight it was all lies. And they literally are running the same playbook again. We'll talk to Ray McGovern in a moment. Also talk about Russia, talk about Afghanistan, Pakistan. And then now we fast forward to they've taken some troops out of Iraq, replaced them with contractors, put 20 to 30,000 more troops and contractors in Afghanistan. They're saying on the news, we caught a secret nuke factory. We caught them. We caught them. It's incredible. And then a few days later, did we catch them? Well, they made the announcement after they knew we knew. So break down what's really happening today.
Yeah. Well, we caught them several months ago, Alex, and they announced the existence of this new enrichment plant on their own initiative, and they did that just a week before the negotiations start. Your listeners perhaps need to be reminded that tomorrow is a very big day because the 5 Security Council members plus Germany